In a country of mountains which bordered upon the sea lived a rich merchant who had 3 sons. The eldest and the second born were his joy, for they were merchants too, and remained at his side. The youngest, however, caused him much anxiety. Not that this youngest son was bad, but love of the sea and desire for adventure ran like fire in his veins, and he could not bring himself to sit beside his father and his brothers in the counting house. Tired of the constant reproaches of his kinsmen, he turned away one night from his father's house and joined a ship as a common sailor. Dressed in sailor blue, wearing a little cap, a blouse open at the throat, and trousers cut wide at the bottoms, the lad ran away to sail over the sea to foreign lands and isles. And as the years passed, one by one, and brought no tidings of him, his father and his brothers gave him up for lost. Now the king of this country loved gems and precious stones more than anything else in the world. Hidden secretly away in the deep foundations of his castle lay his treasure room. It was circular in shape and built of black marble. Along a curving wall stood hundreds of armed men like statues at equal distance one from another, holding torches of light. 100 coffers of green stone lay on the floor at the base of each statue, piled high with gems. And night after night, when all was still, the king would descend to the secret chamber, throwing open the jewel chests, and would gaze long and silently into the gleaming mass within. One night, the king led his neighbor, the emperor of the 7 Isles, to the jewel room and showed him his treasures. "These are the most beautiful jewels in the whole wide world," said the king proudly. "Yes, they are indeed noble," replied the emperor, nodding his gray head. "But why is it that the emerald of the sea is not among them? The emerald of the sea is the most glorious jewel in the whole wide world. Years ago, a fisherman of the land of the dawn found it in a chest which a storm had washed into his nets. At the time I was but a young prince. The jewel was hung on a chain and worn as a necklace by the princess of the dawn, and its radiance beamed if the very secret of the sea were hidden in its heart." "Where is this emerald to be found?" asked the king, who was now consumed with the desire to add the jewel to his possessions. "Tell me that I may at once send an expedition in search of it." "I have not heard of it for many years," replied the emperor, "but I think it is still in the land of the dawn." So great was the king's impatience to become the owner of the emerald of the sea that he could hardly wait for the morning. All night long he slept not a wink, and hardly had the sun risen above the mist lying at the edge of the sea and sky when he sent for the rich merchant to come to the palace at once. Wondering much at the summons, the merchant made haste to the palace and was taken instantly before the king. When the king saw him, he said, "You are the greatest and richest merchant in my dominions. Know then that I have a task only worthy of you. In the land of the dawn, there is a jewel called the Emerald of the Sea. You must find it and purchase it for me. I would give all the gold in my realm to possess it. Be sure that you return with it, for if you fail me, my anger shall strike you down." At these words, the merchant bowed low and promised to sail that very day for the land of the dawn. Then, returning home, he gave orders that the best vessel in all his fleets be immediately prepared for the journey. And so swiftly was this done that the merchant sailed for the land of the dawn on the morning tide. Many days and many leagues he sailed over shining seas, till he reached the harbor of the land of the dawn. Ships were entering and ships were leaving the lovely mountain-circled bay. The merchant anchored his ship in a quiet bay and hastened ashore to find the Lord Treasurer of the kingdom. He found the Lord sitting on a balcony of his castle, which overlooked the sea. Upon hearing the merchant's story, the surprised nobleman said, "You are too late. I sold the Emerald of the Sea only an hour ago to the master of a strange vessel. See, there she is now." And the Lord Treasurer pointed out over the sea to a strange black ship with red sails, which was just then disappearing over the horizon. Thankful that the other ship was still in sight, the merchant hurried back to his own vessel and gave chase. Luckily, there was a full moon that night, by which the shadowy hulk and the swaying masts of the black ship could be seen. All the next day they sailed, but never close to the other vessel did they come. Another night and another day found them no closer. Finally, late in the afternoon of the third day, a great storm came sailing over the edge of the sea. A blast of wind struck the merchant's ship, then a torrent of rain, and when night came, the storm was at its height. When the daylight came again, the other ship had completely disappeared. The merchant sailed here and sailed there, but never a sign of the stranger could he find. At last, with a heavy heart, he gave up the quest and returned to his king with the unfortunate tidings. The king was beside himself with rage and disappointment, scowling as he cried to the merchant, "Because of you, I have lost the finest jewel in the world. If you do not find it within a year, your life and your possessions shall be forfeited to me." On hearing these terrible words, the merchant turned pale, for he knew that the Emerald of the Sea was now lost and it would be impossible to find it. His two sons, however, when they had heard his story, bade him not to despair and declared that they themselves would go forth in the world that very night and to seek the lost emerald. It was finally agreed that only the eldest son should go in search of the jewel, while the second-born should remain at home with his father. And so the eldest son sailed away. The days lengthened into weeks, the weeks into months, the months into a year, yet the eldest son did not return. A guard of soldiers led the unhappy merchant before the king. "Well, have you found the Emerald of the Sea?" asked the king. "No," replied the merchant hopelessly. Now, the merchant would certainly have been doomed had not his second son begged and pleaded with the king for a year of respite in which he too might go out into the world to search for the lost emerald. The king at length yielded to the plea, but took 1/2 of the merchant's possessions as a forfeit. And so the second son sailed away. Days lengthened into weeks, weeks lengthened into months, the months into a year, yet the second son did not return. During this time, cruel storms wrecked many of the merchant's ships, that he lost the other half of his possessions and was forced to take refuge in a miserable cottage beyond the town. On the last night of the year, the unhappy man sat in his poor house by a fire. Far away, he heard the bells of the royal city sound the midnight hour. Neither the eldest son nor the second-born had returned. The second year of respite was at an end, and nothing now could appease the anger of the king. Suddenly there came a knock on the door. "I am lost," murmured the poor merchant to himself. "The king's soldiers are here." And, advancing unsteadily across the room, he threw the door open wide. A gust of wind blew in, which bent the flame of the taper in his hand